And good luck figuring out which team to bet on. But what we know you did not bet on was the fact that Kyrie Irving was going to ask for a trade out of nowhere Friday. And then what you really probably did not bet on was that the Nets would come back just 48 hours later and say, okay, bye. And when they said, okay, bye, it wasn't with the team we all thought he was going to land with. And that, I think most people were, the betting folks were with the Lakers, right?
Yes,
but he lands with the Mavs. He lands with the Mavs. And he, of course, it's literally like a haul. Like they're getting picks for days 2027, 2029, couple of first rounders, a second rounder. They get Spencer Dinwiddie, which is not a bad one to get in that deal.
Not at all.
So, yeah. So when you look at the haul of it, it's crazy. And you may think to yourself, what is the trickle down in the East? Well, think about it. Just this past summer, 6 months ago, everybody was having the conversation. And even before then, a season, a summer ago, summer, it's always pretty much been, ooh, where's KD going to land, right? Yep. And who could possibly get him? And let's be honest, that conversation was had down here. That conversation was indeed had down here. But didn't happen. But now, Jarvis, you're talking about when you look at the standings, this is going to have a potential effect on the Hawks because look, has not this race been like neck and neck other than of course the Celtics and Bucks? They've kind of been far and away the top cream of the crop for the East. Sixers have been falling off a little bit of late because they've been failing to close out games. Then you had the Nets right there, number 4, because of what KD did before he got injured and because of what Kyrie did to pick up the slack. Now, to me, Jarvis, that 27 and 27 that the Hawks have going on, that they are, continuing to show themselves as a 500 team. Well, now the plot thickens because this might have a positive trickle-down effect on what this means for the Hawks and their playoff aspirations. Not play in, play off.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you want to get into that 6th seed. That's the number right now. That you do not want to be in 8, 9, 10. Like you don't want to be in a situation where you probably have to go on the road in a one game on a one-off. And we all know how those games can go down. Like anything can happen.
Yeah,
Trey might all of a sudden get sick or whatever. Who knows? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like you can never know what can happen in those games. That was a joke, by the way, for those people who haven't picked up on that. But anyway, I think one of the things though, when you look at this Kyrie Irving trade, is it kind of starts to make me think or feel that it may sway the Hawks one way or the other. As far as okay, now do the Brooklyn Nets, do they get into a space where they're trying to move and try to get to add more to try to make a push because they know they have Kevin Durant sold up for a couple more years he's under contract for a couple more years, or do they say, you know what, they want to get out ahead of this thing and say, Kevin Durant, we're going to move on because we know that you probably want to be out anyway as well. So it's just a lot of little moving parts, but I don't think that the last thought is going to happen within a few days because the trade deadline is on Thursday. So I don't think that that's going to happen right now. But as far as how the Hawks move, I think this is something they're going to have to really have the come to Jesus moment, right? Because they've been hovering around 500 and they're a middle of the road team. That's who they are. As we sit right here, 54 games in. So and I think that they got to figure out whether or not they want to move on from certain guys whose names been dangled around. And I start with John Collins because we already know that's what it is. And then Bogdan Bogdanovic as well. And some teams are going to call about him. But I think an insider said that half the league has called about Bogdan Bogdanovic. So the plot is it thickens. It thickened when Kyrie Irving got traded. And I think that a lot of teams are going to start really mulling over some things, including the Toronto Raptors. Keep an eye on that team, T as well. So I think the Hawks are going to have to really, that this new front office, this new regime that we have that was forced upon us with Nick Ressler and Landry Fields, excuse me. I was about to say the old assistant general manager back in the day. But I think this is going to be something that we're going to have to definitely keep an eye on because the Hawks are going to have to really figure some things out as it gets closer and closer to the trade deadline.
Yeah, they definitely do. And that, like you said, keeping an eye on the Raptors because OG Anunoby was one that I looked at for forever and was like, dang, we can't
love
get him.
him.
So,
Like, what
yeah,
y'all want?
right. What do you want? But as far as here's the interesting thing as well.
Mhm.
If we're being real about it, you really need the four. That's where the challenge is, because the power forward that you really want to complement a center like Clint Capella, John's just not that person. And that's
He's not.
okay, because that
Yeah.
game could work for a lot of teams.
Yep.
Just don't know if that game kind of works for the Hawks and what they need out of
Mhm.
that particular big. And when you look down the possibilities of trade packages and trade pieces, most of those guys are threes. And I don't think the Hawks are in any conversations to give up DeAndre Hunter.
Nah.
There really
Yeah.
aren't a lot of fours. And it's an interesting back and forth about Jay Crowder, but for all intents and purposes, he's going with the Bucks unless something falls apart, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
to me, then the question becomes, okay, in order to go after a power forward, which is really the only position that you need, well, what about that's where you say, what about KD?
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. You
Oof.
say that, right?
Oof.
Exactly. You say that not necessarily because you want to give up the kitchen sink, because let's face it, Jarvis, like they would have to give up so much. And granted, he kind of flutters between small forward, power forward, and shooting guard for that matter.
Wherever he
But you can
wants,
sneak,
yeah. Like,
exactly, but you can
play any
sneak him into
position.
the forward. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can sneak him wherever the heck you want to, and he could do it. But then the question becomes not just for a Kevin Durant, but I think you make a great point, allowing Kyrie Irving to be traded, the possibility of KD saying I want out too, and what those factors will be. I think that'll be the interesting thing, because it goes back to, okay, if John Collins, who does not have the value, you and I, we got a tip on that Friday.
Yeah.
An insider
Yeah.
told us, hey, he just doesn't have the value that he had a season or two ago. So if you're going to send him off, you better package, you better have a serious package deal. And Bogdan Bogdanovic isn't even enough in the package from what we're being told. So that's why, yes, there may be some opportunity for the Hawks, but the moves may be small, because I don't know that they really have, that they're willing to give up the pieces. And you know those pieces, Jarvis. We're talking about Onyeka Okongwu, DeAndre Hunter, AJ Griffin. Now, would they give up a Jalen Johnson? Yeah, but from what we're hearing and seeing, that package might not even be enough. The eyes are on AJ, Double O, and, well, they know they can't have Dre. So, in all likelihood, you can't have Dre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think for contract reasons as well, right? Because I think
Yes.
that's a piece that, or
Oh,
factor that makes John Collins unattractive
no
to a
question.
lot of teams,
No
especially
question.
contending teams. So I think, but I think overall, I think you might be on to something when it comes to small moves. I think that's might be where they land,
Mhm.
and I think that, just not being a fit, Collins, that is, as far as at that position, because they need
Mhm.
a guy that can roll and roll and roll in the
Yeah.
pick and roll and crash that lane and
Mhm.
just bang. Like, that's what they
Exactly.
need. They need
Yes.
that. They need
Yes.
somebody to bang right along with Clint Capella. And
Mhm.
when
Yes.
be able to
Yes.
move down to the 5 when he's out
When he,
of the
yeah.
rotation. And
Yeah.
that's one thing that I saw that really stood out to me against the Denver Nuggets, right? It was in the
Mhm.
second quarter, and
Yeah.
basically your only offensive option that they had on the court right now
Mhm.
at that moment, excuse me, is the fact that was AJ Griffin,
Mhm.
and I was looking at how John Collins was kind of struggling with the starting lineup, and as far
Mhm.
as him getting involved, like, I think Nate McMillan kind of really needs to reconsider this whole hockey line changing type substitutions and kind of match up
Yeah.
with teams on the thing,
Yeah.
because Denver essentially had no one in the lineup that was
Yes.
doing anything. And I'm just like, dude, like, you got a rookie that you don't like playing in big moments, and basically a whole bunch of vagabonds, essentially, if I can use a chuckery expression. So, get your guy so you can get him involved. Like, and that's the one thing, kind of adjusting on the fly piece, that I feel like
Mhm.
Nate is missing when it comes
Yeah.
to these type of games. You essentially had a chance against against a contender. Like, this is a real contender. Nikola Jokic
Yes.
is amazing. Jamal Murray went dumb, dropped
Yes.
40 points on you.
Yes.
So like, when they aren't in the game, that's when you need to take advantage. Like,
Yeah.
hey, JC, we not gonna get you this 30 minutes, 35 minutes tonight. You'll probably have to play 40, bro, and
Yep.
get in with this second unit so you can get involved and get
Yeah.
yourself into the flow of the game.
Yeah.
So I think that's the piece that's missing,
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to the whole rotational thing. And
Yeah.
and I really feel like they had the opportunity to win that game,
Mm-hmm.
but you just didn't take advantage. Now they went on the
Yeah.
run after the fact and
Right.
got down to like 8 points or so.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
But
sure did.
it just keep moments in the game where
Yeah.
they're not necessarily don't really show up in the stat sheet
Mm-hmm.
so much, but you have to be able to take those good coaches, really, really good coaches, the guys who are in tune with their guys. They
Mm-hmm.
understand, like, in certain moments, you kind of just
Yeah.
got to throw that whole minutes, rotational, all that stuff
Yeah.
got to go out the window. I'm like,
It
okay, you
does.
got to feel this thing sometimes.
Yeah. And that's such a great point because the last, I'd say 4 or 5 games, even within the winning streak, I
Mm-hmm.
noticed that that's when teams were coming back on them
Yep.
because the Hawks had a pattern. We will have these 5, then we will have these 5, then we will have these 4, back to these 5. And it was like, because that's what the
It's
script
so
was
robotic,
before the
right?
game started, the Hawks
Yeah.
seemed, and Nate McMillan seemed like hell bent on keeping the script, whereas other teams were like, wait a minute, Trey's out for a minute. Oh, DJ's out. Oh, we're about to go on a run.
Let's
And
go.
that's when
Yeah.
teams would get us back. And then only one of those games did I say, okay, I'm impressed because Nate stopped the bleeding way early, where he
Mm-hmm.
threw those starters back in and he was like, bump that, we're not doing that tonight. But yeah,
Right.
you make an excellent point. Got to have a little more flexibility and a little more fluidity on those rotations because other teams are taking advantage of the fact that the Hawks simply don't. But if you want to hear more about this story and not just how the Kyrie Irving trade potentially impacts the Hawks all over the East, all over the West, I mean, it's impacting everybody because there were teams that threw their names in the hat so fast and they were like, dang, like LeBron said, maybe it's
It's
him.
like that.
If you, right. He tweeted, maybe it's me. Maybe. Locked On
Oh,
Sports
wow.
today is going to let you know what they think, whether or not it was just something Kyrie was always going to do, whether or not LBJ was a part of the issue, or whether or not the Nets were just being petty and saying, haha, we won't trade you where you want to go. Find
Mm-hmm.
out by going to Locked On Sports today. Of course, you can check them out on YouTube or wherever you download your podcasts. They also have Take of the Day. Who knows? Maybe they'll be giving you their thoughts on the Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes matchup and the historical perspective of it. Or maybe like we do in For the Culture, they'll just tell you about some, what is that term Jarvis just used? Some dumb things that happened in the Grammys. Don't
Dum-dum.
forget,
Yes.
after ATL Day 1, check out Locked On Sports today.